Hi, class. Tell me. I'm done. Yeah, Sunday.
Well, there you go. Oh my goodness.
You want, right?
I mean, I would love to buy my own blue. I'm afraid it might be
Yeah.
I honestly have I don't mind not running. No, but I mean, I'm thinking about it. Can I pull it off?
Yeah, I like it.
We're in like 6.
Do you want the agenda up, Patty? You guys need to.
We will. There was no.
We'll find out sooner or later. Hey, Haley. Hi, Haley.
Let's move to bedroom. That'd be back to it's there. That's all I'm thinking about. Alright, I think I'm supposed to read all the power trip. Do you know the main idea?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. If you're a senator or proxy, and you should please raise your hand. Okay. If you're a proxy, will you raise your hand? And what's your name?
Albert.
I'm a proxy.
What's your name?
Gabby and a Clerico.
Got it.
You want me to spell the last name?
Max sent it to me here.
Oh, okay.
Another proxy, any other proxies? Audra does have a proxy that she submitted. It's already here. We'll start in like 2 more minutes to see if they show up.
Do you know info?
No. Yeah.
That's ready. So meta.
I get rid of that.
Yeah, you suck.
I was like, ow. It's like in front of me, like looking at the camera.
Oh my god, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I got every side of your good side of it. Sis. Every side of your good side. Yes, 51,000 followers.
I bet you would
Oh, okay. All right. The live stream is up already, so let me know what's double check. Yeah, you're all good.
All those at home.
All those who watch the touch that photo.
Okay, I call this fourth special meeting of the 12th Undergraduate Senate to order. I'm going to begin by calling the roll. Senator Pentar. Here. Senator Lickstein. Here. Senator Gale. Here. Can I have your name, please? Sahara Azizia. Senator Rogers.
Here.
Senator Zitzman.
Here.
Senator Bardo.
Here.
Senator Pugh.
Here.
Senator Kina.
Here.
Senator Conover. Here. Senator Grant. Here. Senator Adeli. Here. Senator Smith.
Proxy.
Okay. Senator Morrow. Here. Senator Spivak.
Proxy.
And Senator Zangi. Senator Zangi. Okay, so we have 14 out of 15, which is quorum. Okay, so we're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. This is the agenda. Is there any discussion on it? Senator Zitzman?
I have 2 points of discussion.
Okay.
All right. First is observing the large number of people here. I would move that each period of public comment be limited, each one to 20 minutes.
Okay. Please remain in order. Thank you. You want both of them to be 20 minutes?
At maximum.
Is that your
Of course, we don't
amendment?
have to
Okay.
wait there the whole time.
Okay. Any other discussion on the agenda? Senator Adeli,
Can we move for voting by ballot instead of roll call?
you need secret ballot?
Yes.
Senator Zitzman?
You got my second point.
Okay.
Was the 5-minute period of questioning of both sides simultaneously. That's item number C. Can we make that like 10 minutes for now and then maybe expand it later?
Okay. Any other discussion? Senator Rogers?
So a few points. First, I would encourage senators to vote against adopting this agenda and to adjourn this meeting. The 13th Undergraduate Senate has been elected. Those elections have been certified and the results have been announced. This Senate, this group of student leaders, shouldn't be making any more decisions on behalf of the student body, especially considering only 3 of us will be coming back in the new Senate, in the 13th Undergraduate Senate. We've had our last regular meeting. We've had a special meeting to certify the election results. We've completed the duties and responsibilities required of us. We've run our course. It's time to turn over this body to a new generation of leadership. So I urge all senators to reject this agenda and adjourn this meeting so that the new Senate may be sworn in and consider all the facts. Now, it's important to get to the bottom of why exactly Director Mascaro was removed, but I think that's the job of the 13th Undergraduate Senate and not this one.
Any other discussion on the agenda? Senator Bardo?
Yeah, I'm just going to deny that. Will reported to us the entire year. We have known him. We have known this new e-board. He was also fired in the Senate. Therefore, it is up to this Senate to enact on that. And also, I think, to be honest, we would be the most bipartial body when you've already had Taylor's cabinet members emailing new senators. So I think that we have seen Will, we have seen him, and we have also seen this entire situation. I think we could be the most impartial body and also keep us fired under this body. Therefore, we should be the ones to consider it.
Any other discussion on the agenda? Senator Pintar?
I'd like to move public comment to without limitation. I think we have a largest audience we've seen in a long time, and I think people have a lot to say today. So I don't think we should move that.
Okay, so how this works is like you guys can amend it like without seconds or voting, but like then you have to adopt it. So because your amendment is not germane to his amendment, we're gonna have to vote on this before we can do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Senator Zisman?
Can I just ask for a show of hands with the senators here before I might withdraw this? I just want to see if people actually want to do it. So if you could, this is kind of unorthodox, but raise your hand if you want to take away the limits. Okay, I withdraw that amendment if I can.
On both public comments?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Any other discussion on the amendment or on the agenda before we vote? Secretary Schneider?
I would encourage the Senate to not vote by secret ballot. I think that it flies in the face of accountability, which is the reason number 3 if senators were able to sign a public petition and then circulate a public petition that hundreds of students signed on to and put their names out there, senators should go on the record on how they vote tonight.
Okay, any other discussion on the agenda? Senator Rogers?
Yeah, also on the point of the secret ballot, I think that, it's important to recognize that many people in this room and hundreds of other students around this campus had the courage to add their names to a public petition. And I think every senator here should be able to find that same courage to cast their vote publicly and have it be part of the record. We were elected to represent the students, so let's do it right and let's vote by roll call.
Senator Deli?
I remove the amendment to put it by secret ballot.
Okay.
We're disaster.
Any other discussion on this amendment? No, if you want to be a senator, you can be a senator here. Okay, well then I'll fix it. Yeah, take a seat, grab your name, please. Okay, well, please. Any other discussion on the agenda? Okay, because we actually had discussion on it, I'm not just gonna adopt it without objection, we're gonna vote. So is there a second to this agenda?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting this agenda, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, with the opinion of the chairs that the yeas have it, the agenda is gonna be adopted. Sweet. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to a period of public comment. Does any member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on behalf of Christina Politz.
Okay. Yes. Go for it. Try to keep it
She
short.
wrote a statement. She is not with us today, but I'm going to read what she sent. So I'm senior advisor for case. My name is Raquel. So hello, friends. First off, I would like to apologize for my absence. I'm unable to make it.
Let me just, to make it easier, can you come to the front?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
First off, I would like to apologize for my absence. I'm unable to make it due to the fact that flights back from Bolivia are very expensive. However, I felt it was absolutely necessary to say my part. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Christina, and before I left, I was a Deputy Director of Communications for CASE. As Will's first staff member, I have watched how Will has transformed a two-member organization that students barely knew about into one of American University student government's most successful departments with over 40 staff members. In over a year, Will has added a language to the conduct code to include bias-related incidents, has added 20 times the advocates in regards to previous years, so that there is always somebody available to help a student in need. Most importantly, he has worked tirelessly to make sure that students know of their rights. In the years I've worked alongside Will, I have seen him go above and beyond to improve our time at AU. The decision that the e-board made was unfair, uncalled for, and even overreaching. If Will made a mistake, miscommunication between departments should not immediately result into the termination of his term. Removing the strongest AU advocate is a disservice to every student at this school. As a retired senator, I know your sole job is to serve our community. I hope that you do not let us down today. Thank you. Could you give your name to my clerk, please? Class of 20. Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
I'm also speaking on behalf of someone. Caitlin Robertson couldn't make it tonight, so I'm here to speak on behalf of her. Good evening. I'm sorry I cannot be here in person tonight as I have a prior commitment. Thank you to the Undergraduate Senate for holding this emergency meeting tonight to discuss the reinstatement of Will Mascaro as case director. When Will originally told me he was removed from the post, I was shocked, upset, and infuriated, not just because Will is a friend of mine, but because I know firsthand how passionate Will is when supporting students. Last spring, I was working with the Title IX office regarding a sexual assault case. The university informed me that I needed representation within a few short weeks. Of course, at that point, no lawyer would be able to help because it was on such short notice. I reached out to Will, who is the director of what is now known as CASE, as a friend. He did not hesitate to help. We planned a coffee to discuss in more detail what happened, what support I would need, and how the hearing process would go. As the hearing date moved closer, Will and I faced a great deal of resistance from the AU administration and the respondent. We were bombarded with fake evidence, misleading information from the university, and were backed into a corner of having to navigate this mess. When we were drowned in having to relive my traumas over and over, Will was steady. When we were backed into a corner and my mental health was failing, Will stepped up to the plate and fought tooth and nail for me. When I was having panic attacks regarding the case, he would invite me into his office to calm me down and remind me that what happened to me is real, is disgusting, and that he would under no circumstances let the guy who assaulted me walk. When the university tried to make this the most difficult experience, Will was straight to the campus life office to figure out what was going on. That is who Will Mascaro is. Will fights for what is right and what is just. He cares about the rights of students and the safety of students on campus. He understands the system that's in place, how to navigate it, and has the compassion to help students. Quite frankly, there is no better person to fill the position of case director than Will. The e-board made a grave mistake firing him over wanting students to have cards that detail their rights, which they intend to use despite all of this. Thank you again to the Undergraduate Senate for holding this meeting and for taking my testimony into consideration. And thank you again, Will, for fighting as hard as you do for students. If I had to go through this again, I would pick you to be there with me for every step of the way.
I just want to remind all senators and exec members that when public comment is going on, we put our computers down to show respect.
Okay, does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, Steve, oh, go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I'm back. I'll keep this brief because I do have to go, but I'm George Sears, president of the Advocacy Institute, and I perhaps have the privilege of saying I've taken both sides over the multiple days that this has folded out, and I would like to suggest to the Senate that maybe this could be resolved in 10 minutes. As the Senate is notorious for taking longer than it needs to do things, I doubt this will happen, but my suggestion would be Mr. Mascaro or Director Mascaro, however you'd like to term that, obviously made a mistake. I'm willing to say that the executive board made a mistake as well. I don't see why, other than for some kind of rhetorical division, we've decided to take both extremes in this case. There's no reason the Senate can't say, Will Mascaro, you did something wrong. We're going to reprimand you, but we're not going to take away your job. I professionally consulted multiple student governments, and I performed research formally on them. And I found that they tend to be very successful when they act as if they're corporations. If I were running a corporation, the American University Student Government Incorporated, I would say, Mr. Mascaro, director of, I don't know, marketing or something, briefcases. I would say you've done great work. You made a mistake. We're going to reprimand you for that, but we look forward to seeing the work you can do in the future. And I would suggest to our esteemed president of the corporation, I think you did nothing wrong. I mean, is that not obvious? I mean, someone makes a $4,000 error, you're going to reprimand them. I think I've already used up more time than I was hoping to, but as president of the Abramson Institute, as someone who knows too much about student governments, and as a student at American University, I would urge the Senate to not take its time, just think about it briefly and go with the common sense side of things. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Go ahead. Oh, I called on him, but go ahead. It's fine.
I just want to quickly say I'm Cal. I've known Will for a long time. I started high school with him 4 years ago, I think, or no, longer than that. So I'm 2 years younger than him. He's always been a voice for the voiceless, and I can attest to that from the day I met him. And I think based on a lot of people in this room and the turnout tonight, I think a lot of people wouldn't be here or wouldn't be involved in AUSG if it wasn't for Will. When I started here, I could have cared less about what was going on in AUSG. I really didn't even know it was a thing. And I look up to Will, and he took me in, and probably a lot of you, and he's always been in my corner. And if he hasn't been in your corner yet, he probably will be. So thank you, Will, and I hope you guys make the right choice tonight.
Would you give your name and class to my phone?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak?
Julian, LIUS.
Please remain in order.
Hi, everyone. I'm Benjamin Koshman. I'm the Deputy Director of Recruitment and Retention for CASE, as well as a Senator-elect for the class of 2020 for the 13th Undergraduate Senate. And I come here to you today to represent and to advocate, as in our organization we like to do, for my friend, colleague, and esteemed boss, former boss, unfortunately, Will Mascaro. Now, I would like to shed a little bit of light onto the events of those unfortunate days of which my friend and colleague, Will Mascaro, was abruptly and extrajudicially removed from his position as CASE director. When he was abruptly suspended, we lost communications with our CASE email, case@ausg.org. Now, all of our cases, every person that reaches out to CASE goes through that email and that email alone. Now, Will himself was working on a multitude of cases. I was working on a multitude of cases, many of them extremely serious, some pertaining to Title IX issues. Now, when our comms went down, our clients were furious that they were not able to contact Will, who had helped so many of them and was continuing to help them with their cases. We were down. And you know what? The appointee of our esteemed student government president did not incline to inform any of us of this happening. They did not share any of the emails that we had received. They did not tell any of the staff what was going on or who had assumed his position as interim director. They just left us in the dark. Do you know how serious that is? Do you know how much that inhibited our occupational capacity? I had people screaming at me over the phone, sending me furious emails because they were unable to get to Will because their conduct meeting was in 2 days, and the only person that was able to help them was Will. The only person that had the know-how to help them was Will. And you know what? He wasn't there for them. Not because he didn't want to be, but because he was barred from being there. And if that is not the single most egregious act of all of this, then I don't know what is. Because I stand here today as a representative of this organization, as a representative of my friend Will Mascaro, and I stand here today and all I care about is helping students. I don't care about the politics or the who said, she said, he said of all this. All I care about is getting my friend and the fiercest advocate for student rights I know back in the saddle, because I know him and I and the rest of CASE are ready to advocate for you and for every student in this university. Thank you.
Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Someone down.
Hi, my name is Jayha. I am a senior advisor for CASE. I know that you're all well aware of the definition. However, I would like to restate what the definition of a comptroller is. It is the head accounting officer of a company or government, and in this state, like student government. And last time I checked, I actually checked on the website today just to make sure I wasn't crazy or anything. The person who holds that position is Christine McElbeck. And I'm sorry if I butchered the last name. The job of Will Mascaro is to oversee CASE and CASE only. Even though he has had the experience, being that he was the finance chair and wrote the past 2 student government budgets on time, that's still not his job to have anything to do with money. Keeping that in mind that he has held these positions, which are pretty high up, it is to my understanding that he is more than well aware of how to submit a budget request and the process that goes along with doing it. Considering all this information and all the claims from SG and emails and he said, she said, about accountability, where's the person who approved the budget request? Like, why is she not receiving the same treatment, considering Mr. Mascaro filled everything he needed to do on his side? Like, if we're going to throw around the term accountability and it should all be across the board, it needs to stay that way. And it is very much possible that Christine made a mistake. She's a student first. She's not a professional in her job. However, like, I understand she's human, but a much better response would be to own up to your mistake and not use Will as a scapegoat. Because after the request was approved, all the responsibilities were in the hand of the comptroller, meaning take accountability for yourself.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, come on down.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aunt Sargent. I'm a senior policy advisor for CASE. I personally am not a big fan of AUSG. I've never thought it really represented a lot of underrepresented people on this campus, but I decided to join CASE specifically because of Will. As BSU president, in the past, Will reached out to us about fixing the conduct code and adding bias-related incidences in the conduct code. And prior to that wasn't even discussed or enacted. So through my position as president, I saw how much Will cared, and he really reached out to us as presidents of organizations that tend to not be communicated with in terms of things that affect us as a community. So I really appreciated Will's initiative in reaching out to us and working with us to get something that was really important done. So I just wanted to say that I would never have been a part of CASE if it weren't for Will. He really cares about students, and CASE would definitely not been where it is today without it.
Yeah. Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, come on up. Whenever you're ready.
I'm Ariana. I'm senior advocate of CASE, and I wanted to say that the way this entire deal has gone, at best, it displays a lack or lapse in professionalism and at worst, a complete and total disregard for the student body. Like Ben said, CASE has been on a complete, almost shutdown because we don't know what's happening. Our bias report has been delayed. Students don't know where to get their advocates from because we were left in the dark. No one told us anything. But the most egregious factor in all of this is the reason he was fired in the first place. Listen to me when I tell you this, that stop trying to gaslight us. That stop saying that this pushing the rhetoric of the prices is the issue. It's all about the money and the prices. We know that American University wanted these student rights cards to look specifically like the Oasis ones in the bathroom, meaning the printing paper, the ink, everything was standard, meaning the price was pretty much non-negotiable, meaning no matter who sent in the request, that was going to be the price. So why are you wasting everyone's time? Students, actual students who pay money to attend this university aren't receiving the benefits that they're entitled to because you're wasting our time. Please, I urge each and every one of you to do the right thing and end this chaos and confusion and give my friend and colleague and someone I'm honored to call my director and hopefully my director once again his job back. Thank you.
Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time?
My name is Spencer Hurwitz. I'm a former senator for the Kansas at large and former senator for the class of 2019. As well, I also served as deputy director of mental health. I just want to say that the situation right here was approved by the comptroller. Therefore, the comptroller should be held responsible. No negotiation. That's really all I have to say. It's not Will's fault. He submitted a request and did his job. If there's an issue, it should be up to the comptroller. I don't really know the situation. If you did your job or not, if you did or did not do your job, but it's not up to Will to figure out what's the issue. He's just director submitting the request. So that's really all I have.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time?
Yeah, I'm a former senator as well, and it's really shit. I got something from the meeting. Doing a victory lap. As we hear the deliberations going to come forward, I ask you, like, are these cards still going to be used? That's the big question. The people that are in office now, they still want these cards to be done, which is a fantastic asset for their whole platform, what which is a huge part to the student body. That reminds us, like, are these cards still going to be used? And it's not to. Yeah, there were mistakes made, but it's not to fall on Will. You know, Will's a great guy. I wouldn't be incentive without it at all. I never thought I would be in government at all, and I think he's the one that pushed me to do it. I'm so happy that I did. I'm so fortunate about my experiences. But I think that mistakes were made, misunderstandings happen, but cards are still going to do a good thing, and if it expedited the process, what's the harm in that? That's going to resolve this termination. So it doesn't seem right to me. But I think for all of you, consider these cards are going to be used in your whole processing. So thank you for your time.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yeah, you can go now.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. I'll just stand there.
A little louder. Sorry. My name is Faith. For those of you that don't know me, I've been in this organization for like 3.5 years. Can't get rid of it. I was a senator twice. I was the executive director of financial aid. I was chief of staff under President Gilthorpe. I was secretary, and then I was deputy director of communications for SAC last year, and I currently serve as a special advisor for the case. Now, I'm speaking directly to the senators of the 12th right now. Most of you were around last year. You saw some of the stuff that happened last year, and far worse things happened in this organization last year that we said was okay. If this really happened the way that the executive board says that it happens, then it was a case of misfiling a form. Like, do you really think that's a fireable offense based on all of the stuff that we allowed to happen last year? Is misfiling a form really the thing that we're going to come down on someone for? That's just something to think about. Do you want to spell your last name for me? R-O-J-O-W-S-K-I. And what class year are you in?
2018.
Thank you. I didn't want to spell it wrong. Okay, does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to new business, which is the consideration of Will Mascaro's removal from office. These are the rules that we adopted. First is gonna be a 5-minute statement from President Judson, then a 5-minute statement from Will, then a 10-minute period of questioning, and then debate, and then roll call. So, Taylor, if you'd like to come up, do you have slides you want to share with me?
No, it's fine.
Okay. I'm just gonna ask that like you all keep them whispering to a minimum, just for everybody's respect factor. Do you want to put it on? I'll put it up right there. Okay.
Good evening. Article 12, Section 7, subsection 1 of the AUSG bylaws state the student government shall operate under all budget and finance guidelines set forth in university controllers, purchasing, and student activities policies. All forms, contracts, or letters that in any way financially obligate student government funds must be signed by the AUSG comptroller and the respective student activities advisor or their designee. The decision to remove Will Mascaro was not an easy decision to make. It took much deliberation and was not based in personal beliefs. Will Mascaro has served the AU student body diligently, and his work to AUSG has not gone overlooked. The issue that has brought us here to a special meeting of the 12th Senate is the order, production, and purchase of 1,000 student rights cards for a total of $3,800 that was not authorized or approved by student activities. This has resulted in a nearly $4,000 bill for products that were not approved or guaranteed student activities fee funding. The following information details the progress of the ordering of student rights cards and the subsequent removal of Will Mascaro. On July 28th, Will met with Lisa Freeman, Director of Housing and Residential Life, to discuss the student rights cards. On July 31st, in an email from Lisa to Will, an email from Lisa to Will, he stated, "I wanted to note that we are partnering with a manufacturing company that is widely used by AU. The cost is being completely absorbed by our department." On August 7th, Lisa Freeman sent Will an email to discuss the challenges faced for implementation, such as material type, upkeep and replacement, access, location, timeline. Lisa then responded by saying, after all of these questions are answered, they still need to be ordered, printed, and installed. On August 10th, Will gave Christine Mitrovic the budget request, and it was subsequently signed and approved from Christine, but was still in need of final approval by the student activities director. Following Christine's approval, 2 hours later, Will emailed the manufacturer and said, quote, "Whenever you have a chance to send a copy of an invoice, I'll be able to send over payment," which financially obligated AUSG to pay the bill. On August 15th, Jeffrey Bloom, the manufacturer, sent an email that said, "Attached, please see a copy of your invoice. The pricing is as quoted, but includes the shipping and packaging charges." Will responded by saying, "Hi, Jeff. Awesome. I'll get the payment processed today, and I'll call that number and pay via card." Jeff then shipped the product to Will's apartment. On August 30th, student activities first brought this to Will's attention that the order was placed over Case's budget, and they were not sure whether or not official university approval was given in order for the order to be placed. On September 5th, in response to an email from a student activities staffer, which stated that which asked for an email thread or some verification of approval from Dominic, the former student activities director, or another student activities staff signing off on the order. Will stated, "In terms of proof of purchase, I could either forward you an email from the representative I worked with, or I could physically bring in the boxes of flyers to show you." He's followed up by stating, because it was coming from restricted and it was long-standing ongoing project, we assumed we'd have the okay to move forward with the purchase. In mid-September, Will, Ayanna, the director of student activities, and I met to discuss the lack of approval, and we left that meeting with an agreement that Will would then send further information and documentation that approval did indeed happen. This did not happen. On October 4th, Will scheduled a meeting with Ayanna for October 16th. On October 8th, Jeff followed up with the payment for the student rights card. On October 10th, Will responded to Jeff's email saying, "The delay is solely bureaucratic. The money is there. The processing of issuing the credit card for payment is just being slowed down." On October 16th, Will failed to meet with Ayanna. On October 19th, Ayanna sent Will a follow-up email to meet on October 23rd.
On October 23rd, Ayana notified me that she temporarily suspended Will from his role in case in my cabinet as a result of not attending the meeting to follow up to clarify the official university member did not grant approval. Liz Pancotti agreed to serve as interim case director until applications would go live because she is the senior most case deputy. On October 31st, we'll send a follow-up email to the meeting with Mike and Ayana that he had the previous week to send further documentation, which did not include authorization from student activities as mandated in Article 12, Section 7, Subsection 1. Following this, I notified him of his removal from Director of Case, replacing an unauthorized order and promising payment for the student rights cards without approval from student activities per Article 14, Section 1, Subsection 3. It states, any appointed department director may be removed from office by the appointing executive. In Article 1, Section 2, Subsection 1, which states there shall be established a Center for Advocacy and Student Equity case with a director under the authority of the president. This decision was based solely on the executive board's decision to ensure transparency and responsibility. If voting in favor of this bill, you would be just setting a dangerous precedent for AUSG in the future by voting to reconsider the decision to remove Will from the position of case. You'll be voting in favor of actions.
Sorry, your time has elapsed.
I move to allow President Dumpson a period of 5 additional minutes to speak.
Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Okay, so there's a second. The motion on the floor is to give her 5 more minutes to speak. Is there any debate on this motion? Okay, seeing none, Senator Sisman.
Just encourage all the senators, of course, if Will needs 5 more minutes, be parallel there.
Any other discussion? Okay, so motion before the floor is to give her 5 more minutes. All those in favor of this say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, the opinion of the chairs of the yeas have it. Taylor has 5 more minutes.
Cool. I won't take that long. This decision was based on the executive board's responsibility to ensure transparency and uphold accountability within AUSG. The fundamental issue at hand is that Will Mascaro placed an order costing $3,800 that financially obligated AUSG to pay the cost without approval by student activities. By voting to reconsider the decision to remove Will from the position of case director, you'll be voting in favor of actions that inappropriately obligated student activities fees, which are funded by undergraduate enrollment fees, to be paid without the receiving of prior and appropriate approval. By voting in favor of this, you'll be setting a dangerous precedent for AUSG in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. Will, do you want to come down? And do you want me to do your slides for you?
I don't need the slides, actually.
Okay. I'll let you know you have 20 seconds.
Thank you. I don't want to speak right in front of you. I'll do that. What'd you say? It's okay. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm a talker, so I want to try to time myself so that I don't go over. Okay. I first just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. In my entire time being a member of student government, I don't think I've ever seen so many people here at any meeting. I'm a little embarrassed as to do with me being fired, but nevertheless, I thank you all for coming. Seriously, I do. The purpose of me being here today is to provide you with the information as it happened. While I was not able to provide this to every single student in the room, what I was able to do was to send an email to every senator in the room to provide them with the information, documentation, transcripts of conversations, and screenshots necessary so that as I'm speaking today, there's some sort of backup for what I'm saying. I'd like to first provide some background to the project itself. The student rights card is not a new idea. It's an idea that's been talked about roughly for 2 years now, an idea that many people who are in student government, who are in this room right now, have supported and hopefully will continue to support regardless of the outcome of today's vote. Additionally, I want to make it clear that it's not any project that was the responsibility of one individual or the idea of one individual. It's something that has been mutually worked on by a large number of individuals. And as we worked over the summer to finalize the project, to finish the language, to work with administrators to make sure that the approval was there, we reached the natural logical progression that we were going to need to make a purchase, that we were going to need to ask for funding, so that we would be able to move forward with implementation. And that brings us to the real purpose of this conversation, the issue surrounding funding. So I want to be very clear with the timeline of which can be very clearly backed up by all the emails that the senators have. So first, to be clear, our request was submitted not on August 10th, but on August 5th for funding. That request was sent to the Student Government Comptroller, who effectively acts as our Chief Financial Officer. Based on all the information I've ever received and based on Article 3, Section 1, Subsection 1 of the Student Government Bylaws, the Student Government Comptroller is the final arbiter of financial decisions. And when on August 10th, I received the confirmed, reviewed, and signed financial budget request form that was then turned into student activities, it was my impression, and not just my assumption, but very clearly the expectation that approval was given by the comptroller and that any necessary additional approvals needed was also given. I made myself available to go into student activities to speak to anyone who needed to be spoken to prior to that document being signed. But once it was signed and once we were able to move forward with the permission from the individual elected by the student body to manage their money, I felt comfortable knowing that the request had been approved. From there on out for months, I received no information to the contrary. Throughout the time during September, speaking to members of student activities, it was never a matter of if it had been approved, it was a matter of where do we find it if we can't get the money from restricted. And again, when we're talking about restricted, the money coming from there, that is a lump sum of money set aside that is not actively being spent. I know my budget, I know that it was $1,000, and I knew the cost was $3,800. We deliberately suggested that we get the money from restricted, knowing that we wouldn't have enough money in our budget. It was not intentional to go over our budgetary limit. We did that on purpose. And when that account was confirmed for our use, we felt comfortable moving forward. I also think it's important to talk about my correspondence with the manufacturer. Before August 10th, there was no offer of payment, no indication that we would be able to pay, nothing of that sort. After August 10th, once confirmation was given by our Chief Financial Officer, and once no information to the contrary was provided, I felt comfortable saying to the individual, to the manufacturer who, on his own accord, sent the cards to us early without receiving payment, that we would be able to follow through on that payment. I felt comfortable doing that because the money we were spending is not student activities money, it's student money. It was sitting there, it was allocated by the comptroller, and I knew that we would be able to pay. I knew the project was meaningful, I knew that it mattered, and after August 10th, the emails that I sent, as the president mentioned, clarified that we would be able to offer the payment because the Chief Financial Officer of our organization had said the exact same thing. Before August 10th, there was no indication of payment, there was no offer of payment, and most importantly, from this entire time, when I say that we didn't spend any money, I mean it, because we have not spent any money. It's as if you're on Amazon and you put items in your cart, but you never hit checkout. That is exactly what happened in this instance. We never had a credit card, we never had a check, we never had the means to make payment, and we waited for student activities to follow up on their responsibility to allow us to use student money to fund this project. Thank you. In conclusion, I think I'd like to say this. I have spent 3 years in this organization. I've spent the past year and a half running CASE. It has been the privilege of a lifetime. There are not many things that we can do in student government, but what we can do is follow up on our promises. That is my intention with this project, and I hope I have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Point of information. Is there anybody from student activities here, to your knowledge?
Is Ayana here? Yeah, Ayana is here. Can I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the 10-minute questioning period of both sides simultaneously. So you can, like, I'll call on you, you'll let me know who you want to ask a question to, or if it's both, that's also fine. And we'll do it that way. Does that make sense? All right, so 10 minutes.
I have a question for the speaker.
Yeah.
Could you pose the question to senators whether they would like to hear from student activities before they proceed with questioning of Will and Taylor?
Okay, so the secretary's wondering if you guys would like to hear something from Ayana, the Director of Student Activities. The best way to do this is to take a vote. Is that what y'all want? Or does somebody want to speak on that, answer that question?
I move that as a motion
To,
to request someone from student activities to speak.
okay. Do you want to ask the questions? Do you want her to give a report? What's your motion?
Allow her to do whatever she wants, if she wants to field questions or if she wants to make statements.
Okay, so Ayana inherently has speaking rights. It's in her governing documents. Ayana, do you want to give a report or do you want to field questions? What would you like to do?
It's up to y'all. Tell me what you want.
Senator Pugh.
I move for a 3-minute statement for the student activities director.
Okay, so there's been a motion to hear a 3-minute statement by the student activities director. Is there a second? Second. Okay. Debate on this motion. Senator Lichty.
I think that questions could also be really helpful in understanding following the statement. Maybe if we could have like a 2-minute question period.
Is that a motion?
Sorry, amend.
Okay, so you want to amend the motion?
To a 3-minute statement and a 2-minute question period.
Okay, so the motion that we're second, okay. Any discussion on Senator Lichstein's amendment to the motion, which is to have Ayana give a 3-minute speech and a 2-minute period of questioning? Any discussion on that amendment? Oh, thank you, Senator Hudson.
I hate to be pedantic, but can I amend the amendment to the motion to make it 4 minutes of questioning?
So 3-minute speech and 4 minutes of questioning.
Yes.
Okay, there's been a second to this amendment to the amendment to the motion. Is there any discussion on changing the length of questioning from 2 minutes to 4 minutes? Okay, seeing none, we're going to vote on that. So if we say yes to this, we would then be discussing a 3-minute period of speech for Ayana and then a 4-minute period of questioning. Does that make sense to everyone? I'm trying to be as concise as possible. Okay, so all those in favor of Senator Zitzman's amendment, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, we can end the chairs if the amendment passes. The amendment to the amendment passes. So currently what we're discussing is Senator Lichstein's amendment, which is adding 4 minutes of questioning to the motion. Is there any discussion on the adding 4 minutes of questioning? Seeing none, we're going to vote. All those in favor of Haley's amendment to the motion say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, continue to the chairs that the amendment passes. So now the motion before the body is to give Ayana a 3-minute period of speech and then a 4-minute period of questioning. Is there any discussion on this motion? Senator Grant.
Will the questioning be simultaneous to the questioning of President Dunstan and Will Mascaro?
That's not how I understand it. I would understand it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, sponsored, but that she would come and speak right now, have 4 minutes of questioning, then we would go back to Will and Taylor. Does that make sense? Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote. All those in favor of giving Ayana a 3-minute speech and 4 minutes of questioning, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, so opinion of the chairs that the motion passes. Ayana, would you like to come speak for 3 minutes? Whenever you're ready, you can come down. Or whatever you want to do.
Hello, everyone. I haven't met a lot of you. I've been here 2.5 months. I'm the Director of Student Activities, and so in my role, I advise SG Exec. In terms of what I have for the sticker situation, it was brought to my attention the first time the form was brought to Student Activities. I looked at the budget for case versus the request. At the time, our financial manager, her name is Shale, I said, this is more than I have. Can you follow up? So Shale sent emails to us asking for clarification. One of the emails were responded was that he had been working with Dr. Ah, Katie in Conduct, and Lisa Freeman in Red's Life on the project. So during the time between that and when I met with Will for the first time, I emailed Dr. Ah, Katie, and Lisa to find out what was going on. The information I got from Katie was her role was to make sure the information was correct. There was no formal approval. Dr. Oz said the same thing. Lisa Freeman in Red's Life said that she had been meeting with him, but there had been no confirmation about the use of the stickers and had recommended actually looking at some other options because there were concerns about putting the stickers up in the Red Hall. At that point, it was brought up at SG Exec what was going on, and the stickers were here. And so my question to Will from the first time that we met was, who approved the purchase? So was it Dominic, who was the previous student activities director? Was it Mike, who's the senior director? Because there was a transition between Dominic and myself. I never signed anything, so it never had my approval. And so that still, right now to this moment, hasn't been clarified. And so that was part of the reason the decision was made about the transparency and accountability, because there is still no admission that the purchase decision was made without the final approval of student activities, which is in the documents. And then as of yesterday, I spoke to Lisa, and she said, as of yesterday, it's still not been approved to put up in Res Life. So we have the stickers. There's no confirmation that they're ever going to go up in Res Life. That's kind of been, so we have a box of stickers and nothing to do with it. And the person has not been paid yet because you have to go through Senate to get to restricted. The comptroller, I said, how do we want to manage this? You're going to move money around with the exec inboard money, or go through Senate to request for restricted. That's why it hasn't been paid, because we can't pull money out of the sky. And the budget is currently allocated in a way in which 3,800 is not accounted for. So that's been part of the process for the holdup. And is that my 3 minutes?
47 seconds.
I hope to meet you all in better circumstances. Come see me in student activities if you'd like to get to know me. I'm there every day, Monday through Friday.
Thank you. So now we're into the 4-minute period of questioning. Does anybody have a question for Ayana or Morrow?
So I'm just curious about circumstances regarding purchasing. So Will is saying that a purchase has not been made, but we are held liable for those cars because we are currently in possession of them. Yes. Correct. Okay, so we will have to make that purchase and pull it out of somewhere, right?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Pintar?
Just so everybody is clear, the comptroller did approve this purchase, did approve that we were going to have the students' rights cards. Is that correct?
The comptroller did sign the form, yes.
So AUSG was prepared to find money for these cards. Is that correct?
You have to ask them for that. Because when it came to my office, I put a stop because the amount didn't match. And that's the last thing that I had in terms of the actual form.
So you're not a proxy anymore because your senator showed up? So I can't call.
Sorry.
Sorry. Senator Lichty.
Yeah, thanks for being here first off. Secondly, so the budget procedures in terms of who has to get the approval from SA, like is it the comptroller or the individual person making the purchase? I can't find online, and I'm currently the finance chair of student government, and I've never been given a copy of the budget procedures. So I guess my question for you is 2 parts.
Sure.
One is the budget procedures in terms of who is supposed to actually get the approval from SA somewhere that students can reach.
You mean like the particular person?
Yeah, so like, is there a way that he would know that this wasn't something that the comptroller had gotten approved? And then secondly is, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. About it, I can try to answer that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
So my understanding is Will came in to drop off the form to our office for processing. At that point, that's when I put a stop on it. So he knew that the form that comes to student activities for processing. That's what I can answer for you in terms of like the process. Like you have to go through student activity with your student organization or one of the other groups to actually make a purchase, whether it be with a pro card or having them call or over the phone, et cetera. It has to go through our office.
Okay.
And so my understanding from talking to Mike, who's the senior director, because I was in here over the summer, is that there has to be approval. There always has had to be approval by student activities before a purchase is made.
So my second question is, I know that you started here pretty recently. If the students that are handling large sums of money, such as myself, never get trained by SA or given the proper budget procedures, is it appropriate to hold us to like such a high standard that we can't make like a filing error or a mistake when nobody ever teaches us? Like I write a $500,000 budget for the students and no adult has ever trained me to do that.
I've been here 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for what happened before I got here. My understanding is I'll wait till I finish. My understanding is that there are trainings, but the trainings are siloed. I know that we have 2 financial people in the office who go through the process and do them at the beginning of the year. And so that has happened. My other understanding is that all of the students who are part of SG have access to the documents, right? So that'd be Constitution and bylaws. And so the financial section in the documents does say that, that SG has to follow university, comptroller, and student activities policies. So that for me is the catch-all, and that's what Mike received in terms of there is a process involving student activities. I can't speak to the training that you received prior to. I can tell you that moving forward, there will be an expectation for training because I never want to be in a situation again as a student activities director.
Thank you. Can I just ask one more question?
So
Okay, yeah.
we have
Oh,
20
yeah, yeah.
seconds left, so Senator Zisman.
I move to extend the questioning period for more minutes.
Okay, so there's been a motion to extend the questioning period 4 more minutes. I heard a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote. All those in favor of extending questioning for 4 more minutes, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, can you, the chairs of the yeas have it? Questioning is gonna be extended for 4 more minutes, starting. Senator Zisman.
Thank you for being here. So, in an interview with the Eagle, our student newspaper, Secretary Chris Schneider said that if we, the executive board, didn't remove him, Will Mascaro, the university, was going to remove him from office. So, as the representative of the university here, can you say whether that is true and like whether you do future tense now if the Senate reinstates Will Mascaro intend to remove him from office?
So I can't speak for the university. My name's not President Burwell. What I can do is talk about the financial policy. So if there's been a violation of the student code of conduct in terms of the way in which money is supposed to be processed, it would be the same as with anyone else. But we're not there yet, so I can't say for sure that student activities at the university will or will not pursue this. What I know is that the amount is owed and it must be paid, and that has to be figured out. The question is, how will that be paid? And that's what I can give you.
If I could follow up, as shrinking questions, because you've got only your office, like as director of student activities, do you currently intend to, if the Senate reinstates Will Mascaro, remove him from office?
So I will not remove.
Okay.
That's not my role. That's why it went through SG Exec. My role is the accountability piece, which is a conversation that I've had with Will and with SG Exec. My question has been from day one, who approved the purchase? All I need to know is who approved the purchase, and we can move forward in finding out how it's been paid. As of today, I still do not have information. Myself, Dominic, Michael, who approved the purchase. So that's kind of the space that I'm in right now.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go to Senator Adeli.
I guess this is also a two-part question as well, since I honestly just don't understand the procedure at hand. So if there has to be approval from someone else, my first question would be what's the magnitude for the approval from the comptroller? And second of all, is there ever collaboration through the SA office with the comptroller before that you know of, even though you're new, or was there any collaboration or discussion that happened within the 2-month period that you've been here?
So I know that the conversation Chrissy and I have had. Okay, moving forward is if there's something that she's approved, she CCs me so that when those forms come to the office and they're moved forward for approval. So there is a communication between myself and Christine. But given the fact that this happened right when I started, that was not in place. But once I've done the one-on-one meetings with all of the members of the exec and the policy process, that's what we do. So if someone has requested a co-sponsorship, once it's approved by the comptroller, I'm CC'd on that. And if there are any issues, then I will address it then. Otherwise, I won't sign off unless I know that SG Exec has signed off on it. So that's the reason why it starts with the comptroller. My job is to make sure that we're not out here buying babies or, guns or whatever. So I have to make sure that it's in line because I'm pretty surprised some tools, just kidding. I have to make sure that we are using the money in the way in which we're supposed to. The student fee allocation from the controller's office says that my office is stewards of student fee money. So we have a responsibility to make sure it's being spent accordingly.
Okay, Senator.
Do you have any, given that you're new, any information or any knowledge of the manufacturer that Case has used, given the history with AU?
I've had a single conversation with the manufacturer, and I asked them to just send me the emails, the communication, so we could see what had happened. That's been the extent of my communication with the manufacturer. So I don't know any previous ways in which they have done business with AU, SG, etc. That's before I got here.
Senator Grant.
Yes, so in the statement that President Dumpson made, it was stated that there were several meetings that I believe it was you and other members of the administration reached out to Will and that were not followed up on. Is that true? Can you provide any context for that?
Sure. So after speaking to Dr. Katie and
Time has elapsed on the period of questioning. So Senator Lexine.
How much is this time questioning? 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, there's been a motion to extend the questioning for 5 minutes. I heard a second. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Without objection? Okay, 5 more minutes.
Right. So after the conversations with administration and speaking to exec, Taylor and myself called a meeting with Will. That was the first time to find out what happened. As this is the information that I have, can you provide who approved the purchase? At that time, he gave me the history and the background of the stickers and talked about the role of the case. And I said, I just need to know who approved it. He said, I will get you some information. After that, I think a couple days later, I have to check my email. He emailed saying he wanted to schedule another meeting because he had some additional information. And I said, great. We had a date. I said, let me know if you're available. There were a couple emails from me to Will that were not responded to, but there was still emails going out about case business, and that was concerning for me because we hadn't clarified this. And so at that point, I sent an email saying, until we are able to meet, I'm going to have to suspend your position. So it was not based off of the sticker thing, is that we had not had clarity of closure for that meeting. After that, he responded. He met with myself and Mike. The same questions were asked. Who approved the purchase? There wasn't clarity on that piece. Will did provide the information that he'd given us before. And we said, this is the information we've given before. I just need to know who approved the purchase. So I've met with Will twice, once with Taylor, once with Michael Elmore, who's the Senior Director of the University of Student Activities. That's been the extent of my meetings with Will.
Are there any other questions for the Director of Student Activities that are more?
So I'm just curious, it seems like there's some discrepancies as you're new. So I'm just wondering if you spoke to the person priorly in your position, the people that they were never approached. Is that correct? I know that's kind of like,
what you mean.
So you're saying who approved it? So you're new and then someone, did you speak to anybody, the person that was priorly in your role?
So no, I spoke to Mike, who's the Senior Director, who's been in, he's been in student activities, and nothing from him. There were no email threads that I have from Dominic, who was the previous Director of Student Activities. And we'll offer to provide some confirmation. I assume that would be an email or something from someone saying, go, and that's not what I received.
You haven't received like a confirmation?
No.
Senator Kenna?
Thank you. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure.
So you said that the suspension from student activities was with regard to not meeting you. Could you speak to the financial procedures to would firing Will be the appropriate?
That's not my call.
Okay.
So I'm just going to put that out there. That's why we're going through this process. I only get involved when I have to. And so again, my role is a steward to make sure things are done the way in which they should be based off of the documents.
Okay. So in speaking to the proper procedures as they're written, in a hypothetical situation, if an unauthorized purchase had been made and student government had not fired Will Mascaro and would it happen, didn't happen, would the university have had taken action in regard to this?
In terms of student activities, there still would have had to have been a process for payment. Because the way SG is written, to access restricted, there are rules. We have to look at the budget the way it is. So something still would have had to happen to approve the $3,800 because that had not been allocated or approved anywhere else. So that's what would have happened. I don't know what that would have looked like, but I'm telling you that it would not have been an automatic.
Funding part of it. I'm asking about like the consequences for making an unauthorized purchase.
So would there have been consequences for making an unauthorized purchase?
If it was Will or someone else had made an unauthorized purchase and the executive board had just gone along with it, had not fired him as he had been fired, would the procedures in place call for the university to have removed him or punished him in any capacity?
It would have been based off of the finances. So again, it's not about, well, as I can speak of you in third person, like you're not here, so I apologize for that. It's not about Will the person. It's about if it was Susie, who was the director of case, we would be talking about Susie. It
That's
was
my mom,
decision.
funnily enough.
Really? I promise I'm not stalking.
Yeah,
It's about the decision that was made by the person in the position. So it doesn't matter who the person is, there still would have been some type of accountability. What that looks like, I don't know, because again, it would have started with SG as what the documents are. My question is, and would have been, how is this going to get paid for? And what's the process for that?
Yeah, no, again, thank you for being here, especially since you're new in the first couple of months.
Keep telling me I'm new. I know how long I've been here.
Good. I'm glad. So you kept saying that the biggest issue when you were talking with Will was who approved the request, right? Well, in an email sent to you by Christine on October 31st, quote, I approved Casey's request based on the assumption that it had been pre-approved before entering my inbox, end quote. So wouldn't it have, like, in Will's understanding, wouldn't it have been Christine who approved the request?
That's a question for Christine. I can tell you.
So, there we go. The period of questioning has elapsed. We're gonna move on. Yes.
Point of inquiry.
Yeah.
Even though it's not in the agenda, can we amend the agenda to somehow include Senate approving of taking the money from the restricted funds tonight?
So what's your question?
No. I'm just saying that.
Okay. So the period of questioning elapsed, so we're gonna move on to the 10-minute questioning period of both sides simultaneously. Secretary Schneider.
I encourage the Senate to extend the period of questioning. She was in the middle of a sentence.
I motion to extend the period of questioning for 2 minutes.
Okay, there's been a motion to extend questioning for 2 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I've heard a second. Is there any debate on this motion?
Just question, does anyone have any other further questions? Any other senator have another question?
I'll ask one more if we extend,
Okay.
but if not.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote. All those in favor of 2 more minutes for questioning of Ayanna, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, 2 minutes.
So what I was saying is the approval is from student activities. That was the approval that I was talking about. So whether it been Michael, Dominic in his previous role, or myself, was the approval that I was looking for, because student activities has to approve the final purchase for it. So that is what I was talking about with approval. It wasn't Christine. So hopefully that answers the question.
Senator Blixey?
Yeah. So just one more question. When we talk about that this would have to go through restricted and that whole process, I just want to ask that this year there was like $1,005.63 approved from restricted by SA for T-shirts and travel cups
For when was that approved?
in the 2018 student government breakdown.
Like was I here? Because I didn't sign that.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Secretary Schneider?
Can I talk? Just like briefly for a
As
second?
long as you form it in the form of questions, it's fine. So like, what is it true that?
Okay,
Is it true that, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
sure. I don't know if you can answer this, but is it true that I, as secretary, submitted a request to student activities in August to spend $1,005 on T-shirts and travel cups for student government for use for promotional materials for Welcome Week, which is a use of restricted over the summer, which the executive board is empowered to do. Are you aware of that?
I know the items are here. That would be a question for Mike and our finance, because again, if I've been here a week, they're not gonna have me signing things. I don't know what's going on. So I'm sure there was a process. And if you guys want to talk to Mike, just so you know, he's willing to talk to folks if they have questions. There you go. And I will be sure to let him know that y'all got some questions for him.
Okay, so the period of questioning is elapsed.
Also, as a person.
So we're gonna move on to the 10-minute questioning period of both sides simultaneously. If there's no motion to extend this questioning period, it doesn't look like there is. So, 10 minutes of questioning. Yeah. Senator?
Will you direct this, I guess, to both parties? In your opinion, should there have been, or was there mediation attempts, and should there have been mediation attempts before terminating Will Mascaro?
I would like to answer first.
I'll ask President Dumpson first.
In my personal opinion, our meeting with Ayanna to request who approved that was that conversation. In that meeting, I expressed my concerns with the situation to Will, but that was the extent of that. As like per the bylaws, it's under my authority that I can remove the director of case because case directly reports to me. So that was what we found to be necessary given the circumstances, because
that total of $3,800 is actually about the same amount of money that the chief of staff for student government receives when taxes are taken out. So that's literally the amount of money that could employ another person in student government, whether it was an executive board or whether it was another director of case or whether it was another executive or department director. That amount of sum, with that sum of money, still needs to be accounted for.
No, there was no mediation. I found out that I was being even considered for being fired on Halloween at 6 p.m. when I received an email saying I was fired. So that conversation did happen. That is absolutely the case. I did not have any conversations with any member of the executive board in a formal capacity about my potential firing.
Senator Linsky.
In past cabinets, who was responsible for getting the approval from SA, the comptroller or the individual person requesting the money?
And past cabinets, I can't answer that because I wasn't on a previous cabinet.
This is my second time being on a cabinet, but I've been in positions elsewhere. In all of my experiences, it has been the responsibility of the comptroller. And I also want to clarify that when I say that, it's not intended to be a dig on Christine. I think that Christine is very good at her job. I took her approval as the approval because that's always what I've been told to take it as. And I assume that she had done anything necessary in addition to that approval to make sure that it was approved with student activities.
Okay, great. It seems like Christine's being brought up a lot. Is there any way we can question her also, just so we can get like all the facts straight on both sides? A motion, yes.
Okay, so what is your motion?
I motion to allow Christine to be questioned along with President Dumpson and Will Mascaro.
Okay, is there a second to Senator Barto's motion? Okay, is there any discussion on this motion? Senator Zitzman.
Seeing as two people questioning gets 10 minutes, I move to amend Senator Barto's motion to extend the period along with bringing in Christine to 15 minutes.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Okay,
Does she have a say? Just
No.
Senator Moore.
Wonder.
Be like the same structure as the other, and that she makes statements in the meeting.
So, guys, my understanding of the motion is that we would just add Christine to this, and you'd add 5 minutes. Is that what you wanted, Senator Barto?
Sure.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay. Other discussion on Senator Zitzman's amendment to the motion to extend for 5 minutes. We're only discussing the extending for 5 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we're going to vote on that part. All those in favor of Senator Zitzman's amendment, say yay.
Nay.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, so continue the chairs if the yeas have it. The motion is now to add Christine to this and add 5 minutes. Is there any discussion on this motion? Senator Linsky.
Does Christine want to be questioned?
So you would like to answer that question?
I'm more than fine with it because there seem to be a lot of questions surrounding the funding and budget process.
Any other discussion on Senator Barto's motion?
Move to do it by unanimous consent.
Okay, so what's your motion?
To approve this by unanimous consent.
Okay, so there's a motion to vote by unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Okay, so now we're going to vote. All those in favor of Christine being questioned and adding 5 minutes, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, opinions of the chairs that the yeas have it. Christine is going to add. The time on the clock is currently 7 minutes. We're going to make that 12 minutes. Okay, somebody else for questioning? Senator Zitzman.
For former director Mascaro, there's been a lot of talk about like a hypothetical Loch Ness Monster confirmation from student activities that may exist or may not. Did you ever get written confirmation from student activities for the spending of this money for the student rights cards?
No, the first indication I received was an email on August 30th, which is in your inbox, Senator, from someone from student activities from Shale to discuss if the money can't come from restricted, where can it come from? I would also further add that I think that any correspondence as to the approval of that on student activities end probably would have, if it was, be sent to the comptroller.
Senator Barto.
To the comptroller, do you think it was appropriate to grab a finance form, sign it prematurely, and then slide it under the case's door? Do you think that's like in a professional manner? So that Will can, in reality, lay whatever money figure that you would want on that.
As stated in my email, I said that I would not have approved the fund request if I had known that Will would not have gone to student activities or gotten any confirmation from Lisa or any other members of the university administration regarding the student rights cards. That assumption that I made was based on the fact that what I was told by the former student activities director, Dominic, is that it is not up to me, but up to the person requesting to follow through on their own request, as it has been shown to me by Chris and other members of SG that request money through restricted, going through me and student activities as well.
Senator Pintar?
My first question is for Director Mascaro. Can you comment on the notion that students are, quote, on the hook for this accused purchase and that students are getting their money taken, et cetera, for what's going on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd start by saying, in response to the comments made by the comptroller, I sought out the approval of the comptroller for this funding request because I was asking if student money could be used. Never has a student government member gone to a university administrator outside of student activities to talk about funding, because this was not purchased by the university. This was not put on a university credit card. It was student money that was spent. And any day I will be put up to questions and being held accountable on whether or not I'm using student money appropriately. So I do sort of reject the idea and dislike the idea that students are being put on the hook, because I think it's overwhelmingly clear that students support this project. I think it's important for students. I think it equips them with the rights that they need. And I sort of resent the idea that anyone is being dragged down or held back by this project.
I'm going to go to somebody else because there are other outstanding questions. Secretary Schneider.
This is for Comptroller Jovic. Is it not true that every time I've requested funding from, or just in general, in your experience with your financial process, is it not true that in order for a person with a budget such as myself, in order to spend money, the first step is to go to you for approval?
This is true.
Okay.
And then
Is it not true that you must sign that form in order for it to get to the next step?
Yes.
And then there is another step after you sign the form. So you have to sign the form in order for there to be another step.
Right.
Thank you.
Senator Zipton.
In President Dumpson's statement, she said that you, former Director Mascaro, were suspended originally from your position by student activities pursuant to your absence from a meeting with Ayanna, the student activities director. So would you mind telling us why you missed that meeting?
I don't mind at all. And I don't want to speak for Ayanna. We can pull up the emails if we want to. There was a back and forth over trying to find a time to have a follow-up meeting. Part of the reason for the back and forth was because some of the time I was unable to meet. And on one email, I did not respond. And that is my responsibility. That's my failure. The week I did not respond was midterms. And it's my mistake. I take full responsibility for that mistake. But there's sometimes when I do try to go to class and do that work. So it's my mistake, but it was not intentional or malicious.
Senator Morrow.
Were you aware of the process as written by Chris, that you had to get it approved by the comptroller and then had to get it approved by student activities? And did you get it approved? I don't know. The question that Ayanna keeps bringing up is that she asked you and she wasn't really provided any evidence or confirmation of who approved it. So I'm just curious as to what your position is.
Absolutely. Every time that question was brought up, and in subsequent emails when I had the opportunity to send information, I confirmed that it was the comptroller who approved the request, because that's who I went through. In my email to the comptroller, the initial budget request, which is in your inbox, I said that before it was approved, if needed, I and Chris would be happy to go into student activities and speak to them if they had any questions. That offer was not taken up. And so when I received the signed, confirmed statement, the financial request of the use of student money, I took that as the confirmation. And I had no reason not to take that. And it was not until August 30th, 20 days later, that I received an email from student activities to first indicate that there was an issue.
I'm going to go to somebody else. Senator Barta.
To ex-Director Mascaro, in your entire experience in student government, which transcends, I think, all of us in this room, have you ever had to go to SA to get financial approval, or has it always been the responsibility of the comptroller to get that approval?
I've never gone to student activities for approval. The only time I've ever gone to student activities was after a program was already approved and we had to talk about implementation of the program.
Any other questions? Senator Pintar.
My questions are for President Dumpson. To your knowledge, during ex-Director Mascaro's correspondence with the manufacturer, did he ever give any credit card information?
No.
Did he give them any bank account information?
No.
Did he give them any explicit means of purchase, any explicit means to fund this purchase that you're accusing him of?
To fund the purchase?
Yes, if he needs money to make purchase,
So
yes?
you don't need money to make an order. I would like to kind of redirect the statement. So like Will mentioned in his example about the Amazon, the difference between Will's example and the example we have currently is that it's like placing an order on Amazon, pressing like order, and Amazon sending it to you without you paying for it. So they're here. We have them. There is no money because in order to do that, you would have had to have prior approval from student activities. Because there was no prior approval above Christine from student activities, the tangible financial transition was never taken. As a result, we have the stuff. It's like giving someone a bill. It's like eating your food at a restaurant and like eating it and then walking out.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
I'm gonna go to somebody else. We have 5 minutes. Senator Lichty.
Yeah, so my question is for President Thompson, and it's 2 parts. That's okay. So the first part is, you stated in your speech that this wasn't an easy decision, and that you do value the case director. Yes. Okay, so my follow-up is, this is like with respect, how do you explain that starting 6 weeks ago, what I can name 4 members of student government that work under you or your exec cabinet approached Will and warned him that you were having weekly meetings discussing how to possibly terminate him from his position?
Having weekly meetings with
your cabinet.
With my cabinet?
Because to like
with my cabinet or the executive board?
With the executive board.
With the executive board and executive conversations, like that's between us as an executive board, and that has all to do with the student rights cards and the fact that since August, we as an executive board have known about the inappropriate order of student rights cards from Case. As a result, that's a conversation we have with the executive board, and it was not an easy decision. As you mentioned, it took a lot of time because at that point in time, it was not an easy situation about how to move forward with this. As an executive board, that's the decision we made in forming that. So it wasn't like it just popped into my head. That was the steps that we took. And then I informed Will on the 31st.
Senator Grant.
Yeah, so I have a question for Will. So it seems like you're basically what I keep hearing is that you were confused or not aware of the process, and that you feel like you made a mistake in terms of a simple mistake in terms of not understanding that there should have been that second step of approval. Is that correct?
Based on the information I was given, I felt comfortable that approval was given.
Okay, and so as was mentioned in President Dumpson's statement, the stickers were sent to your house.
So that's not entirely true. They were sent to American University. If anyone has sent a package to or received a package here, you'll know that if you put 4400 Massachusetts Avenue and nothing else, it bounces back. So sent to American because they use that address, it bounced back. They asked for an alternative address, and I gave them ours, where I live, so that it would get here 100% here, so that I knew we'd get it.
Okay, so based on confusion or not fully understanding how the process worked, you put forth and kind of made it seem like there would be payment, and then went ahead and asked for a place for the stickers to be sent to. Correct.
The only time I talked about payment or a place to send the order was after the August 10th email, where I received confirmation of the funding request approval.
Which
I'm going to go to somebody else because we have outstanding questions. So there's time for minutes. Senator Adeli.
It's a 2-part question for the comptroller. The first part is, what's the difference? Again, because I don't know the policy the comptroller follows.
what's the difference in the approval from a comptroller than it is from approval from SA? So like, I guess what I'm asking is, what is the purpose of your approval, since it already has to go to SA, which nullifies your approval?
Gotcha. So my approval is that SG isn't collecting the money that's on each of your tuition bills where it says student activity fee. That money goes to student activities. And so they have the last word, not me. I don't have the authority to do that, which is why we have this kind of hierarchy in place when it comes to restricted money that has a special procedure.
And what's your approval for?
My approval is essentially saying that SG is all right with spending or allocating money in this way.
Okay, so then so I guess like now knowing that there was an assumption made, I don't know if there was a conversation made since I don't have it in my inbox. Do you think it was, I don't know, was it a mistake of Will, mistake of Senate for not overlooking it, Finance Committee, whose mistake was it that there wasn't a collaboration between SG and SA for all of this to occur? Do you have like an opinion on where that mistake lies? Because I think the disconnect could have been on any of the directors.
Sorry, the time has elapsed.
Motion to extend by 10 minutes.
There's a motion to extend this question period by 10 minutes and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Move to vote by unanimous consent.
Okay, without objection, we're now going to vote. All those in favor of extending by 10 minutes, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, committee of the chairs that say yays have it. Period of questioning is extended by 10 minutes.
So I guess what I'm asking is that it seems like this wouldn't have been a very unique situation to Case, because if there was another director who was in this position, I don't know if they would have also been put in this position. So I guess
they would have been put in this position because each director, each person who has access to budget to student money and can request money from me for restricted money has to go through me and through student activities. You require both approval. Mine is not a substitute for the other.
Right. I think what my question is that why wasn't there collaboration in the first place through SG and SA for this to occur?
So to be clear,
yeah.
From my understanding, from what I was told by Dominic as I transitioned into this role, Dominic was here while Will was originally case director before, that it is not my responsibility to follow up on a request made by Will or any other director in the position to request money from restricted. That requires dual approvals. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Secretary Schneider.
This is for Will. I'm obviously not sure what happened in the instance that I'm about to ask about. So after you received the signed form from Christine, where did the form go? Where did the form go after that?
We turned it into student activities. I brought it to their office. At that point, they asked that we bring it back with an invoice. I had to email the manufacturer for the invoice and turn it into student activities.
So that all happened on the date on this.
I would say that it happened between the 10th and the 12th because I had to get the invoice printed out and return it to student activities.
But on the 10th, you gave the go-ahead to the manufacturer that we had.
I said all the paperwork had been turned in. Then I said, yeah, on August 10th, we had turned all the paperwork in. We needed to provide them with the invoice. We had then additionally provided them with the invoice.
So was it clear when you turned in the forms of student activities that you needed to wait for them to say something?
I think if it was clear, we wouldn't be in this position right now. Obviously, it's not clear. You know, I feel like, let me finish.
Yeah.
No one wants to be in this position. I feel like I'm slamming my head to the wall right now. Obviously, there was a miscommunication, and my part of it I take responsibility for. But if the line of questioning is to attempt to trick me into admitting something that I did or didn't do, it's just not going to happen because everything I'm telling you is the truth. You're on a lot of the emails, Secretary Schneider, so you would know also.
Ooh. I'm gonna have to ask that everybody remains in order so everybody feels respected and so this is efficient. Senator Zisman.
Yeah, first want to echo the sentiments expressed by the speaker. Please just be quiet until public comment that's programmed in for you. And second is for the president and Will. If Will gets reinstated as case director, do you two fear that there is going to be such a poor personal relationship between you two that it would impede the operations of case or student government in general?
So I'm of the mindset that when you enter into an organization, you separate yourself from the personal and the professional.
Personally, whatever that is irrelevant to student government. Professionally, I can work with Will on a professional basis, and Will and I have had that conversation.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that was possible.
Senator Kenna.
My question's for President Thompson. You previously mentioned that you respected Will's work and appreciated his service, and you even appointed him to your cabinet. So with it being clear here that there's a paperwork and a filing issue, what was your thought process to justify firing him versus another form of mediation for this issue? Given that it's within your right to fire him, but why was that the consequence?
Yes, because in the subsequent conversations that we had with student activities, and since like I wasn't the one that figured out that there wasn't a prior approval from student activities. Student activities notified us. So when we realized that the student rights cards were here and that like I have one, like that they're here in person tangibly, we realized that there's a lapse because student activities did not authorize the purchase. As a result, student activities then reached out and talked to Will. And there were follow-up conversations between the executive board, also student activities, but also student activities and Will. So because of the sequence of conversations, then my conversation with Ayana and my conversation with Will, for me, that was enough to clarify the fact that we still needed proof of authorization. Since we did not receive the proof, there was no, for me, in my personal or my professional opinion, there was no other alternative, because had this have happened to a KPU director, there would be just as much fire, just as much frustration with an inappropriate expenditure, an order being placed that then builds student government to allocate and pay that bill on behalf of something that was not authorized by student activities.
Senator Lipstein.
Okay, once again, a few parts. So the first is, in the past, there's been departments that have overspent, such as Founders Day over the summer, and then requested a restricted. The exec board came forward on behalf of them and requested restricted money on the good form from the finance committee to get that done. So why was there never in the previously when the people in the cabinets have overspent, not been fired?
So in previous administrations, I was on a part of that. I was on the executive board last year when that happened, but that went through proper approval with student activities. Had it not been done with student activities, check off of, yes, this can be removed from restricted, those people have not been fired as a result.
And then my second part of the question is, why hasn't there been any discussion or motion filed or anything with the finance committee, who is responsible for moving things from restricted, if that's to happen?
That's not
to anyone, sorry.
Okay, that's on me. We are actually going to be reaching out to you within the next few weeks, or whoever replaces you in the next.
Can I ask a follow-up? Why, before firing Will, was there not a discussion with the finance committee, who's responsible for moving things around from restricted, to see if this could be like settled and that there was money to be moved and cover the student rights card?
And I can respond to that as well, because Will put in the request during the summer. During that time, we would have had the authority, along with student activities, to okay and authorize that. It wasn't until school had started that we then had to ask for approval. Because we hadn't found the approval yet, we were waiting until the approval got figured out, then to go and do that. As a result of not having approval, I fired Will, and now we have to move forward with the next steps.
Okay.
Thank you. Given what you've spoken to before about there having been conversations with student activities and with the e-board, it seemed clear that firing was something that you were considering, and yet the procedure with which you conducted that was so abrupt. Why wasn't there discussion with members of CASE for the interim? Why was Will just given an email
Okay, so in terms of conversations with people in CASE, we did have a conversation with Liz Pancotti, and we notified her that because Ayana had at that point suspended Will up from his suspension the day of through Halloween, Liz had been the interim CASE director. I had that conversation with her. The reason why CASE as an entire staff was not notified was because from my conversations also with my advisor, we did not have the proper way of dealing with that at the time, because we still had to figure out what was going on and what was going to happen, because we still had not received approval. Had that happened, then that was the next steps. Also because Ayana, our advisor, Cheyenne, the advisor for Senate, and myself were all out of town last week. I was out of town on Wednesday. All of us were out of town through the weekend. We agreed we would not do anything until we got back to school this week. We have not done anything yet because we were waiting for this meeting.
Senator Stewart.
This box of cards is here on campus. Has it been opened?
Yes, so Taylor has a card, and then 3 other administrators have cards.
Do they look nice?
Yeah.
They look nice.
Sorry, I'm counting how many people, when people are speaking, to make it as even as possible. Senator Rogers.
Thank you. I have a question for both Taylor and Will. So things have gotten a little bit heated tonight, and they often do in the Senate. So I think whenever that happens, it's important to establish some common ground. Now, regardless of sides, I think that we all here support the Student Rights Cards project. And I think that regardless of how this vote goes, it's important for that to move forward. So my question is, what happens if approval is never given by administrators in Housing and Residence Life and other university offices to put those cards up in the residence halls? Do we then have to pay for these cards that we are not able to use? What is the plan to deal with that?
I'm sorry, the time has elapsed.
You just extend the period by 5 minutes.
Okay, there's been a motion to extend questioning by 5 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this motion? Senator Lipsey.
I would just let the senators know, we do have debate after this, and there's a lot of people who've allocated a lot of their time. If you don't have a very imperative question, I feel like it would be okay to, after this, move on to debate between us. If you do, then I don't need to silence you. I want to hear you.
A second. Any other discussion on the motion to extend by 5 minutes? Okay, seeing none, we're going to vote. All those in favor of extending questioning by 5 minutes, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, the committee administrator, the yeas have it. So questioning is going to be extended by 5 minutes.
So to answer the first part of your question, I respectfully would disagree that we all have sides. I don't think it's appropriate to perceive it that way. You're right, saying historically there have been sides in student government, but I do not perceive myself as on the opposite side as the president. I don't. I hope that we won't, any of us will think about it that way. I don't think it's healthy or effective. I think, well, to your second part of the question, what I would say is that the conversations and negotiations with Housing and Residence Life have been very positive and very productive. Those have obviously been halted because of this issue with determining where the funding is going to come from. But I feel very comfortable that the cards are going to be implemented. The conversations have been numerous and very productive. And so at the risk of talking about a hypothetical, I don't think that that is necessarily a major concern.
In terms of what happens with payment, yes, we still have to pay for it because it was billed to AUSG as the entity, and in Will's emails with the corresponding with the manufacturer, it literally says, okay, who do I need to talk to? Do I need to talk to anyone else in SG or in student activities? As a result, AUSG, AU by connection has to pay for that. In the event that we are not able to implement them per Housing and Residence Life because they had not been even okayed or authorized to that, they want to make sure that everything's perfect before they get put up in the residence halls, and there are concerns about who has authority to put them up and place them where. In that event, I think that would be in the best interest for student government then to pass out or have open office hours, just some way, some form to be able to give out, whether it's on the quad or whatever, to be able to pass out these cards to students. So because there's no restrictions as to what you can personally put up in your own room. It's a matter of what happens, but if it's already placed there.
Senator Pugh.
This question is for the comptroller. Based on Article 3 of the bylaws, isn't it true that as the comptroller, you are the chief financial officer, and by the sole fact that you signed the document for approval of funds, you are obligated on representing student government in all financial dealings?
According to my signature, yes, but according to the fact that I said in the email that you have all received as senators, that my signature signifies approval conditional on the approval of student activities, which for the record still has not been given. That is my answer.
Senator Barta.
Yeah, so I just have a question for President Dumpson. Just kind of quick one questions. So you said that you emailed Liz Pincotti on October 23rd, 25th, okay, asking her to take the position and she accepted. And why do I have messages saying that she didn't accept it and did not even know that she was the interim until just a couple of days ago?
Right. So, and I had that conversation with Liz because there was a conversation with Marriott because it was us in the group in that email, and there was going back and forth about trying to set up a time for me. When that meeting happened, it didn't happen in that time frame. But subsequently, I had talked to Liz. I talked to Liz while I was home last weekend. And while in that time, I let her know. Liz did agree to have the email sent to her, so the emails have been sent. In the interim, in between, Liz officially saying, yeah, I accept the position.
Okay, gotcha. It was just very confusing to me because in messages, in comments and messages that Elizabeth said to us and the rest of the case staff members, she said that she didn't accept it, didn't know she was accepted until your statement came out, and that that it was very confusing to her, and that Chris and the rest of the e-board just assumed that you took the position. And as a member of case, that's very concerning to me because we don't know where our NDA, who signed the NDA, who had those emails, and if any member of the public wants to see these, anyone, yeah, no, you absolutely can. Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Senator Zip.
You mind doing a time check?
Yeah, 52 seconds.
All right, for Will, before you were removed from office, how many deputy directors did you have?
We have 6 because they are deputy directors of departments.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Kenna.
I don't know how fast you can answer this question, but given your previous experience in student government and non-Senate finance committee and in executive, could you speak to there being any precedent for firing for a situation similar to this? Taylor mentioned that had a KPU director or someone else done something similar, that would have been similar disciplinary action.
How much time do I have?
17 seconds.
Okay, I think that when talking about me being fired, I'm going to admit that I'm going to be a little biased. In my time in student government, I've not seen someone fired for something similar. That does not negate the bylaws authority given to the president to fire me if they so choose.
Time has elapsed. So we're going to move on to debate. This is 1-minute speeches, no more than 2 per person per motion. So those are the rules that we follow like in every case Senate.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
So these are the rules that we follow like in every Senate meeting. You have 2 speeches per motion. Each speech is no more than a minute long.
Okay, are we allowed to, like, let's say, like, if someone, one of the senators, if there are 2 motions, are we able to extend that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to debate. Is there any point of discussion? Senator Zipson.
All right, so the overarching theme, I think, is something that President Dumpson said, that this is a difficult situation. I didn't grasp how much depth there was to the situation before I heard all of the discussion today. So I have a few things. First of all is that I think Will Mascaro is one of the all-time MVPs of AUSG, but he's been senator, speaker, case director, and he's, as people from case have mentioned, kind of created case as we know it, even though it technically existed before. But at the same time, I think if you really take a forensic, like really granular look at what's been presented today, he did make a financial mistake, and it was in violation of the bylaws because they require SG spending to follow university guidelines, and university guidelines were not met. For that reason, I think the kind of the inquiry after the comptroller, which was kind of negative at times, was inappropriate, and I hope that she will not take it too personally. But with all that said, even though I think Will Mascaro is in the wrong here, I think that the value he presents to student government outweighs that, and that's why I will be voting to reinstate him. Let's see. because of all the things I mentioned, how important he is to student government, because I believe, as former Secretary Arkowski said, there have been worse things that have happened in the history of this institution.
I'm sorry, your
If
time
I-
is elapsed.
And I move to extend my by 30 seconds.
You have two motions.
What's your motion?
Can I just finish?
What's your motion?
I move to extend this individual speech by 30 seconds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay.
Yeah, so Will is so valuable to the institution, and because I think it's important, but it hasn't brought up yet, the medium post by case staff. 15 senior staff, including 5 out of the 6 deputy directors, promised that they cannot and will not work for case without Will being there. There's only 1 deputy director left, who is now interim director. As far as I can see, the department cannot go on at more than half capacity if all those people, including Will Mascaro, leave. So I think it's important that we let him back in.
Senator Barta.
Yes, I'm just going to give a real brief background to everyone here. I'm so glad public is here for once. So just to let you guys know about a little information about the student rights documents, they were first, like my initial knowledge of it was in 2013 when a report came out by former President Pat Kelly, student rights from the classroom to the quad. Then they made a guide that was student rights and responsibilities. Both these documents are posted, yes, on the AUSU website. Who knows where they are by hand? No one. Great. Okay. So then we had, 3 to 4 AUSU presidents, Sophia, Sasha, Devontae, and Taylor. And now this is finally done basically between Devontae and Taylor's term, and because of Will. And we also had many directors of student rights, such as Emma Gore, such as Josh Gutmaker, with this project has ever been done. Many times in student government, people have great ideas. They write reports, but never is anything enforced. Never is anything executed. This was executed. It was enforced. It was a great idea. The execs supported it. They talked about it, campaigning. And now when it comes up to getting it done, it was a miscommunication era. But instead of figuring it out, it's either fire or, you know what, goodbye. And I think that's wrong. I think for every student here, you need to realize that. Your rights matter. If you don't know them, then what is the point of them? And for Will to try to just do this one project and like all the other projects, it's not right. And you should care about what your representatives think.
Any other points of discussion? Senator Lacine?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say that I think that for all the things that Case does, a simple error in potentially filing a form is not a fireable mistake or offense. But secondly, as student leaders, our job is to act in the best interest of the students. And as over 300 students, a lot of you who are here today, signed, Director Mascaro serves Case as in the best interest for students constantly. He has always been a tireless fighter for students and their rights and been there for them without a doubt. And firing him from student government does not help our body in any way whatsoever. And then with that being said, I also think it's important to note that no one came to the finance committee to try to work this out before it was done, and that he was simply fired, which is not respectful to all the hard work that he's done for this. And I implore all my senators to help reinstate him.
Senator Pintar?
Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate everyone coming to inform themselves on this issue. I, for one, am so disappointed that we're all here today over a budget issue, over a $500,000 budget that AUSG holds for a $3,800 project. This is something that has been said before. Every person in AUSG has been in favor of the Students' Rights Card. It has been a project in the works for such a long time, and it's something that we are all in favor of. So when a $3,800 project comes up and we need the money, and apparently there has to be a 2-hour Senate meeting over whether we're going to reinstate the person that has been trailblazing this project for as long as I can remember being on this campus. Director Mascaro has been someone that I have always been able to go to, and someone who I wouldn't be in the Senate right now if it wasn't for him. I'm disappointed that it's come to this.
I'm sorry, your time has elapsed. Any other points of discussion? Senator Pugh?
So I think a lot of people understand that this is either at best just miscommunication, and maybe even on the manufacturer's part. We don't know exactly what happened specifically, but I'm going to just bring it all back and point out to the senators that honestly, this can be resolved in a different way. If it should have been done a different way. The comptroller signed off on the approval already. Anyone else, the comptroller acts as the chief financial officer for anything, any financial related things that student government is dealing with. So after Comptroller Machovic gave the signature for approval, it is up to her, based on the bylaws, to work with SA to make that approval. Now, however, also in Article 12, Section 7, prior approval is needed for any financial dealings with student government. And if Will supposedly did not receive prior approval, then his position should have been in front of the Senate, not simply terminated, based on subsection 7 or 8, sorry, which is the impeachment trials. So.
Sorry, your time is elapsed. Any other points of discussion, Secretary Schneider?
So I'm going to use both of mine at the same time. Is that okay? Okay. I'll just use it every time. So I want to start by saying, I'm disappointed that the conversation has veered away from the actual issue at hand, which is the specific, mistake, error that was made in the budget process, which was not obtaining final approval by student activities. We're talking about the great work that Will has done as, case director, as senator, as speaker. And I've known Will since the moment I stepped on campus as well. And I've been helped by him numerous times. This is not the conversation that we're having, that we should be having. It's the conversation that we are having. The conversation has become about the comptroller. The conversation has become about what she supposedly.
I'm sorry, your time is elapsed.
Can I use my second one?
Yeah, I'll recognize you then.
Thank you. She's not responsible for how somebody conducts themselves after she signs a form. That's, if I am planning on ordering something, I don't go and order it until I receive the final approval. She's not placing the order. That's just not how that works. And she's not the one that placed the order. So her responsibility ended when she said, you need to get, here's the signed form, take it to student activity, which he did. And then he didn't wait for approval. He just went ahead and did it. And I wish that was the conversation that we were having. That is not the conversation that happened today. We had a conversation about Will, and that's great, but it wasn't the right conversation.
I respect all of the members of the executive branch that serve us, and I'm sure all their intentions are pure. So this isn't to malign them, but I have to respectfully disagree with Secretary Schneider's assessment. The way student government works is that there's 3 branches of government. The executive conducts themselves, and the Senate does oversight. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. It is very clear to everybody here that there was a paperwork and a bureaucratic error made. But was firing Will Mascaro the appropriate consequence for that mistake on the piece of paper? Clearly not, and the public display of support for his service is evident of that. So I would implore my fellow senators on the question of should Director Mascaro be reinstated to his position as director of case to wholeheartedly and unanimously approve that decision.
Senator Barta.
I'm just gonna say, I think it's extremely, in a way, disrespectful for the secretary to talk to all of you and say this isn't about Will. Most of you here, are all here because of what Will has done, because of what you have seen. You are the public, you speak for us, so don't let us speak for you. And I just want to say this entire situation just seems so just out of place, in regards to the whole comptroller situation. The comptroller in the bylaws, if we need to really read them, and you can look at Article 2, subsection whatever, we can say comptroller has to do with the university and its chief financial officer. He or she or they, Christine, should have gotten that approval.
Christine didn't place the order.
Excuse me. All right, man. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. But I think this also points out it's as a body and as all is just very off place. Ebert says was accepted. In Massachusetts, she says she did not accept. Christine says that she assumed she had approval, then they try to blame it on Will. Ask yourselves, read between the lines. Does this make sense? Does someone who has fought for the student government basically his entire time at AU gets fired over this? Does it make sense? Read between the lines. It's not black and white.
I would just like to talk to senators right now. I hope you all recognize that for the question you all did for over 30 minutes of myself, Christine, and Ayana, you all recognize there's almost $4,000 that is missing. That is, it's not that it's missing, it's unrestricted, yes, but there's $4,000 of student money that could literally pay another person on executive board, like could pay for a whole nother position. It has to be spent by, all student money has to be spent that was never approved from student activities to actually pay for it. So now student government is being billed, and I hope you understand that the precedent this sets, because that could happen to anyone. It could happen in any department. It could happen in a club or organization that places an order without having the approval of student activities, regardless of what organization they're a part of. That is extremely dangerous.
I would like to just recognize the fact that yes, the total cost of this is $3,800, but if it's not all coming from student government because RHA has given a $1,500 approval as well. So student government isn't necessarily paying for it. Just want to make that clear to senators.
Senator Lickstein?
So Secretary Schneider wanted to discuss the card. So I think it's important to point out that whether or not Will is fired, we are going to find the money to pay for these cards, and then student government is going to use these cards. So it's just like, I don't see the purpose of firing him. But then I also want to say that I think that the student rights card is an actual tangible item that is for the students is more important than hiring another staff member, or like what the equivalent of it would be, that this money is for students and students to benefit for it. And lastly, I think it's a testament to how much Will cares about this position, this organization, and the students, that he is trying so hard to come back to an organization that clearly isn't welcoming him.
Comptroller Wickovic.
All right. So no one is disputing how great the students' rights cards are. We were all prepared. We were all behind the idea. The conflict came when Will did not get approval from student activities. As I said before, my approval does not supersede student activities. Mine does not substitute for that. And it is not up to, you said, Will's kind of role in the project and moving it forward. When he delivered the form to student activities, he could have said, hey, let me follow up on this and keep everybody in the loop, but that did not happen. And after the fact, there is still no responsibility on behalf of Will of obtaining that that approval. And that is the issue here, is that we want all of our executives, all of our directors, all of everybody in SG to be accountable for their actions, because this is student money that we have all pooled together to pay for this. And we love it, but we want it to be done correctly. Let me be clear.
Senator Pintar?
I would just like to redirect the conversation about the real question why we're here. I think it's less to just debate over the depths of the situation. Our question that we will be voting on today will be whether Will Mascaro deserves to be reinstated as director of case. The students' rights cards we are talking about right now would not be present without Director Mascaro. It is because of him, it's because of the progress that he has made that we are all getting these rights cards, and that students will benefit from it from the future. That's why I will confidently vote to reinstate Director Mascaro.
I move to close debate.
Okay, there's been a motion to close debate, and that means a motion to vote. This is a 2/3 threshold. Is there a second to the motion to close debate?
Second.
Okay, there's been a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to close debate? Okay, seeing none, we're going to vote on if we're closing debate. So just to be super clear, if you guys vote yes, that means we're going to go then vote on Will's reconsideration. If you vote no, then we're going to keep debating. Does that make sense to everybody here?
Yes.
Okay. So seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of closing debate, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay.
No.
Okay. The opinion of the chair is that that's 2/3. So we're now going to vote. And per the agenda, this is going to be by roll call. So your voting options, sorry, give me a second. Your voting options are yay, nay, present, or abstain. A present vote means you can change your vote to yay, nay, or abstain once everybody else has voted. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Just extremely clear, just so we're not, yay is to reinstate, nay is not to reinstate.
Yes, yes, yes. Yay is like, yes, yes. Give me 1 second. Are there any other questions at the moment? Okay. So we're going to start voting. Senator Pintar?
Yay.
Senator Lickstein?
Yay.
Senator Gale by proxy?
Yay.
Senator Rogers?
Abstain.
Senator Zipson?
Yeah.
Senator Bardo?
Yeah.
Senator Pugh?
Yay.
Senator Kenna?
Yay.
Senator Conover?
Yay.
Senator Grant?
Present.
Senator Adeli?
Abstain.
Senator Smith by proxy?
Yay.
Senator Morrow?
Abstain.
Senator Spivak?
Abstain.
Okay. So
Point of order.
give me 1 second, please. Okay. You had a question?
Yes, Senator Grant must. Yeah,
Sorry, what's your question?
Senator Grant voted present. She must be reconsidered.
Did you want to reconsider your vote?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your vote?
Nay.
Okay. So in a vote of 9 yay to 4 abstain to 1 nay, Will is reinstated. If you're leaving, that's fine, but please do it silently. Now we're going to go on to old business, which there is none, unless public comment. I should not have restraint. Any member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
Hi.
Come down.
No, I'm just gonna stay here.
Okay,
So I'm Gabby.
Class, my clerk.
Everyone, please be respectful.
Okay. So my name's Gabby, ENICLERICO, and I'm in the class of 2018. And my first comment is I saw an article and there was something under it by the secretary that said, if we didn't fire Will, the student activities would have. And I just think that is complete bull because we elected you as students and we elected the entire executive boards as students to fight for students. That doesn't mean you have to lay down and be like student activities little puppy and do whatever they say, because that's not what we elected you for. And that's not directed at him, that's directed at the entire e-board. So I was treasurer of Pride, and when I couldn't go to the orientation meeting, I was told by student activities that they only had one meeting available, and that if I couldn't go, that I had to talk to the previous treasurer before, which is ridiculous, because is this really on Will or is it on student activities for not making the process more transparent to people involved? Because as far as I'm concerned, student government, there's no the treasurer of case is the comptroller, basically. Like, Will isn't expected to be the director and the comptroller at once. Like, no offense to Christina or anything, but like, she's basically the treasurer in that organization. Like, and it kind of like accounts for the entire cabinet. Third, the missed meeting that was brought up, not only was it midterms, like Will said, but it was also the Monday after fall break, a day and a weekend where normal students would go somewhere maybe and normally miss that Monday. I think the bigger question to ask here is, why was there no follow-up meeting? I feel like if Ayanna truly cared about the issue, why wasn't she like, okay, let's reschedule this? She was just like, okay, so he didn't show up, so I guess that we're just gonna like forget about this now. Like, sorry, that doesn't sound right to me. Also, Taylor talks a big deal about separating personal and professional issues. Then why, during this professional meeting with her, Ayanna, and Will, did Taylor refer to Will as old Will? Is that not something that seems personal to you at all? You guys can figure that out for yourselves. I don't know. Also, have you guys ever heard of an NDA? Because it's really, really fucking important, and you guys could be facing a literal legal issue because you did not sign one prior to putting Elizabeth Pancotti in the position of interim director. So I also think that's something important to think about. Even though Will was just reinstated, I thought that I was going to get to say this all during the debate, so like I'm a little salty, but yeah, I'm done.
Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Would you please come forward?
So my name is Andrew Polinsky. I'm a class of 2021 senator-elect. Many of my fellow senator-elects are here, not in support of anyone's side, but we're just here to show solidarity with SG in general. We hope that we can move on, or at least I personally hope that we can move on from this situation. I don't know Will personally, but I think he does a fantastic job at case from what I've heard. Will seems like a fantastic guy, and I hope he can continue to make case as good as it's been and even better. And I hope that these student rate cards are implemented and do help students know their rights. And I hope all sides can move on. It does seem like there's a lot of personal tension and a lot of drama. And I, for one, am not really for that. And I hope that all of the class of 2021 senators elect, all of the new senators coming in, there's a lot of new senators, will make the Senate a more accessible place for the public, a Senate with less drama that actually gets to work for the people instead of dealing with issues like this. So I hope that we can avoid having these large dramatic things that are compared to House of Cards, and instead let's get down to business. As my friend Mulan over there would say, let's get down to business. Let's finally get to work. And when issues like this arrive in the future, let's not let personal conflict drive our way towards solutions. Let's actually communicate and make sure that people like Will, who are legends in SG and who everyone who I've talked to says they love, let's not let them be fired over something like a miscommunication is what it seems like. Let's actually have real issues hammered out in Senate, and let's not let communication get in the way of getting down to business. I look forward to working with them.
Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time?
It's a little bit difficult for me to come down, so.
Would you give your name?
It's Yasmin Hakami. Again, as a senator-elect who has really no prior knowledge on this issue, nor do I really, quite frankly, care to play the blame game right now. As somebody who's objectively looking towards the future in terms of policy creating, I would implore probably the 13th Senate to maybe look into making sure that individuals who hold director positions or are in any certain sort of position in student government don't assume their roles, but rather go objectively and maybe look into what maybe is stated. I would actually also implore us to potentially write up a bill and exercise the right of having mandatory training for individuals who are placed in positions of power so that they don't enter their role unaware of all sorts of details that are necessary, and then we don't find ourselves in this kind of position where, I don't know about you guys, but right now I'd love to go take some Advil. I have a huge migraine. And also we don't spend 2 hours, which we could be dedicating to homework or maybe writing legislation like elections committee
reform, making sure that AU is not, dependent on fossil fuels, making Plan B more affordable. Like really, this is kind of, in my opinion, something that should have, I'm glad it's over, thank God. But this is what I would hope, would be achieved in the Senate upcoming. So.
Any other member of the public wish to speak at this time?
Well, congratulations, but I just want to say that if we're going to have a whole debate about how the comptroller needs approval of SA, and then our president's going to say then we could fund a whole other position or a cabinet member with the funds that we didn't spend on these cards, when the cabinet member that needs another, her position in a way, not to discredit anything she does, is moot in how we get things done. That seems kind of absurd to me, but I know I congratulate you for choosing your constituents of your confidants, and so well done.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
I'm a quick disclaimer before I speak. I am Senate Communications Director, Brian Fu. I am not speaking in that capacity. I am speaking in the capacity as an individual student right now. So nothing I say is on Senate, the speaker, it's my own personal opinion. I'm also press secretary of case. Also, I'm a freshman. I'm new to AU, just like a lot of you in this room, and I think this is a helpful show to the 13th Senate that students, there were more of them in here, but they're tired. We're done with student government not wanting to take care of us. We're done with people in student government pushing us to the point where we have to give up our time to come and sit in a House of Cards-like area. Just a message to the 13th Senate, we've had it up to here. Don't push us, because we will show up again and again and again and again to reinstate directors, to say we don't want legislation, to say we do want legislation, to say we want someone kicked out, to say we want someone put in. We are fed up with student government politics that don't work, don't represent us, and it's just take that into consideration when you raise your right hand, whenever that meeting is, and swear in that you're swearing it to us, not to anybody else.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time?
Hi guys, I'm Nancy. You may have seen me up here writing down everything that's said in the meeting. So I'm the clerk. I've served as the clerk for the remainder of the Senate, and I'm ending my capacity next week, becoming a senator-elect for the School of Public Affairs. I'm really looking forward to moving to the other side of the bench. But I also do want to affirm what everyone said. Like Brian said, yeah, we've had it up to here with politics and drama. But I also want to say that your comment about like people coming in and like that being as a threat, like I don't see that as a threat at all. I love it when members of the public come to Senate, because that doesn't really happen except for situations like this. So I want to encourage everyone, when it comes to the 13th Senate, please come and hold us accountable. Transparency is something that we all hold dear, hence the fact that I'm writing down every word that's said. So I really do want to recommend that, like, if you want to know what's going on in student government, obviously there are some hurdles with that, but I know, like, as a member of the 13th Senate, we all care about students first and foremost, and we want to make ourselves accessible to you. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that, like, that's something that's going to be prioritized in the 13th Senate.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? You can speak in good of the order if you want to. Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, esteemed senators, wonderful members of the public. So I wanted to come up here and say something to the effect of, I've been thinking about this and trying to figure it out personally, but then Brian spoke, and now I'm just kind of pissed off because, like, we're using a club as some kind of sanctioned mechanism for harassment of people. Like, it goes beyond drama. This is just bullshit. How does the university consider this okay? Oh, sure. My apologies. Yeah, how do we sanction this? How do we see this as okay at all? It's no wonder that everyone considers this drama. It's no wonder that we... This is just weird.
Please, so respectful.
Would we not create some kind of organization where we can do fundamentally good things or advocate for things? What? Don't snap. I don't even know what you talked about here. Oh my God.
They're telling you to be quiet, so be quiet.
Exactly. Don't laugh to be talking first.
You can laugh, but I know people on both sides of this who have legitimate emotional struggles with this. And this is some great game for you, but this has been a major stressor for Will. This has been a major stressor for Taylor. And we have, I don't get how you are morally okay with doing this. I've started the Abramson Institute with some lofty goal of institutional reform. Let me continue it with the goal of institutional reform that we can do something worthwhile, that we can refrain from making this club, drama doesn't describe it, just an engine for harassment. It's not okay. I don't get how you saw it as okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member of the public wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we're going to move on to good of the order, which is for members of student government with speaking rights. Senator Grant.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you all for coming. I just want to say that I echo the sentiments of everyone who did say they would like to have further involvement with the student government. I am very glad that this was one of the meetings that was well attended. I publicized my office hours. I asked people to come to meetings. I've asked people to come to meetings with me in TDR before. Anyone who knows me will say, like, oh, if you invite me to an event, I'll probably show up. Like, you know, I really love it when people interact with student government. And I do encourage that. And I just really hope that you guys do really keep that up for the 13th Senate. The new senators, I would hope that they do want to encourage the public to keep active and keep coming. I would also encourage you to understand that there is always more to, when you're outside of student government, there's always more to it than what you just see put out. And so if someone is telling you something, if someone is describing something, and if someone that is in student government is expressing something to you, I encourage you to look at it from an objective standpoint and understand what is being said, what is being discussed, and what is being talked about. It's always very different once you are someone that is sitting in the seat and you have all eyes facing you and all eyes trying to understand and kind of fight through these issues that you go through. A lot of the times people call it dramatic or too much or unnecessary when Senate does have long meetings and we sit and we discuss things, but it's because we care and we don't want to make irrational decisions that cause in these kinds of things happening. So I would just encourage you to really consider those kinds of things when you do want to become an active public participant with student government, and really just understand that there is always, like, you know, more to it, and that there is validity on, like, all sides, and that we operate and function the way we do for reasons, and we do love your support and encouragement in terms of coming out and discussing these kinds of issues.
Senator Zimmerman.
All right. So first, I would like to thank Speaker Maddie for her job the past week and a half, this culminating in this meeting, but this has been going on for quite a few days, and she's handled it with her characteristic poise. And the second group that I would like to speak in positive regard is the executive board. I would disagree with, I don't think she's any longer here, but Gabby. Oh, there you are. I forgot your last name, but Gabby. I don't think that the executive board is acting as puppies in this circumstance. They did their job. They followed the bylaws. Especially the comptroller did not receive the treatment over the past week and a half. But I believe that the Senate also did its job in determining what they value and differing from the executive board. That's in the bylaws. Our governing documents provide for that. But just because there is a difference of assessment of value between the executive board and the Senate does not mean that we should be negative to the executive board in the student government and in the public. And it does not mean that the executive board did not do their job.
Thank you, Bobby. Vice President Self.
I'd like to echo Senator Zitman. I think that executive and Senate, we are different branches. We may disagree at times. I think that we are fundamentally all working for students, no matter what role we're doing that in. And I do think that for all the drama and kind of personal kind of way this kind of turned, which I regret, I do think that we've shown some very kind of glaring blind spots and discrepancies in student government. But from protocol to communication to how finances are handled, I think that now we've seen these things, now we can really work on improving them and change them so that they are current and they are relevant, and that they work for us and work for students. So I look forward to working with the 13th Senate to really implement these changes that we've seen and kind of work on getting student government back in working order.
Secretary Schneider.
So I think none of us that are still in this room, or people who were here for the entire 2 hours and 20 minutes thus far, wouldn't have been here if they didn't care about something on this campus. And whether it's about somebody who has helped them from their time, the time they stepped on campus, to supporting one of their elected representatives, to just staying tuned into what's going on in their student government. We all care about something. And I consider Will a friend. Him and I have disagreed countless times, usually not this publicly. I hope never this publicly again. But I hope that relationship continues. As I mentioned before, my time at AU has been fundamentally changed by Will as well. He was the speaker when I got here. He was one of the reasons I joined student government. And I've had a lot of reasons why I could have left student government over the past 2.5 years. But I never did, because I see the drive in people every day that I work with, whether it's Will, whether it's any of the senators that are here, whether it's the new senators. It's that drive that keeps me going. That's why I'm here. I'm here because I know that we can produce real impact for students, and we all support each other in that endeavor. So while this wasn't the outcome that we talked about, not picking sides, so like there was a side, quote unquote, that ignored, and we came into hoping to complete the Senate. Well, the Senate exercised its oversight authority, and we accept that as the executive. And I think that that's super important in any functioning government that we consider functional. So we accept, I can't speak for everybody, but we accept, I can speak for everybody now, that we obviously accept the oversight of the Senate. And I think I can also speak for all of us that we look forward to welcoming Will back, getting back to work on issues such as student rights cards that have real impact on students' lives. And there are so many people here, maybe I should book this room all the time. And I hope to see all of you on Sunday, because this isn't, USG doesn't only flare up. We do things on a regular basis. And I think a lot of you brought up really good points about how we seem to be inoperable. And I think they're super valid. And we need to hear it more, because we lose sight of that. We saw how inoperable AUSG was during the spring elections, when we had to declare a state of exception because the bylaws didn't provide for a way out. And we didn't correct that. We haven't corrected that yet. We have not done anything to correct that. So we lose sight of what we need to do sometimes internally. And that's on us, but I hope to see everybody, or a good number of you, at our regular meetings, especially as we ring in the 13th Undergraduate Senate this coming Sunday. Yeah. Thank you.
Senator Spivak.
Bear with me as I tell a very brief anecdote. So last semester I was in a class called Islamic Africa. It was History 485. And the professor was this woman named Elke Stockreiter. She was Austrian. She was very, very rigid. And everything that she said was the truth, basically. I mean, obviously it was history, so there's nuance and whatnot. But what she said was the truth. And she was explaining these concepts that are very difficult. It's a class about Islamic Africa, and most of the class couldn't name more than 5 countries on the continent. So when you're talking about ancient civilizations, combining it with religion, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to grasp. But there was a girl in the corner, and she would always like raise her hand and be very respectfully forceful with the professor to elaborate and illuminate why what this professor was saying was the truth. And I urge you all to take this class. But there was one time when she actually like asked to go up on the board and draw something out as the professor was dictating it, just for the rest of the class to understand. And it's almost as if it was like an assistant teacher or like a substitute teacher who was just making it easier for the rest of the class and really like not dumbing it down, but making it accessible. And like that was Taylor. And it was like unbelievably impressive to see someone, I don't want to say the word combat someone who just was like speaking the truth, just for the rest of the class. And there wasn't that much hostility here tonight, in my opinion. It could have been a lot worse. So one of my like guilty pleasures is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
Not today.
And then another one, it's called Nothing More. And like the chorus basically goes like, I'm not going to sing it, but it says, we are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other, and nothing more. And I've been in Senate for like a month, and I'm a lame duck senator, so like what I'm saying really doesn't matter. And I'm sorry they have to type this out, Nancy, but like, when it all comes down to it, like we're people on a college campus with like ambition and drive, and it's very easy to like make these things like a big deal and like or forget about it the next day. But I don't know. I just think it's important to carry it with you for what it's worth to you, not for anyone else.
Will.
Thank you. I just wanted to second a lot of what Max and the Vice President said also. I think there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. I genuinely believe that. I think that anyone who's willing to put their time and effort into this organization deserves everyone's respect. So with that, I don't want to keep anyone any longer, but I just wanted to say that I'm very much looking forward to the 13th and everything that the new senators will bring into this organization.
Senator Rogers.
Sure. As an outgoing senator, I just have a few thoughts. I think that oftentimes when we're presented with these kind of conflicts, and they happen pretty regularly, I find it discouraging, and I think a lot of other people do as well, both within student government and from the outside looking in. However, I would say that after this night, I am hopeful for the new Senate, the 13th Undergraduate Senate, that they can leave whatever problems we've had over the past however many years behind. And because I think it's time that we move on. I think it's time that we move forward. I think it's time that we get back in the business of advocating for students, because that's our job. So I'm hopeful for the new Senate, and I encourage them to do the best they can.
Yeah, I just want to say, be respectful to e-board senators, new senators, public members. Be respectful, and if I haven't, I 100% apologize for that. And always feel free to come to me. But even when Joyce was speaking, how many people were laughing? And like, I'm not talking about people, senators or e-board members, but if you're part of WI, if you're part of KPU, if you're a member of student government, or you're just a student, be respectful of people. I personally, a lot of times in this organization, I'll tell new senators, as I've told them before, many times people try to make you forced to pick a side. They will literally slide into your DMs, try to get votes from you, try to get things from you, try to spread the truth, false facts, whatever you think. And it happens, and I knew as a new senator, I listened to it, I took those meetings. But all the things, be your own person, and also put your mental health first. I want to also applaud Brian for starting the mental health initiative, because many times as an organization, you don't pay attention to your mental health, and I know I didn't just till this year. And at the end of the day, we always use the phrase students first. And it's a phrase that, like, you know, it kind of means nothing to us now because it's just shoved down our throats in a way. But either way, like, we are students first. But also take this job seriously. To the new senators, take this job seriously. Be your own person. Vote for your own person. Vote for yourself. Yeah, all as just to piggyback on what Senator Grant said, all eyes are on you. That's right. And students' eyes are on you. But do what's right. Don't do what looks good. So I just want to say with that, it has been awesome, and always anyone feel free to come out to me, call me out, because that's what this is for. That we have to hold each other accountable. The public, members of student government, and at the end of the day, remember who you are. Remember why you're at this university. Not to play politics, to be a student, to succeed, and hopefully one day kick Trump out of office.
Yeah, thanks for staying. I don't have much to say on tonight, but this was my last Senate meeting ever, and I just didn't want to end it speaking about this topic. So I just wanted to thank all of my peers. I've learned so much over the last 3 years. It's been such a huge part of my life, and I've really genuinely enjoyed getting to be here every Sunday beside you guys. I've grown so much from each and every one of you, and can't wait to see what the new senators continue to do. You can really make a family in AUSG, and I know it might not seem that way tonight, but it's a huge, huge part of my academic career, and I know so many others here, and so good luck.
Yeah, I'm just going to wish the best of luck to all my 12th undergraduate senators, and even more best of luck to the 13th undergraduate senate, because I'm very hopeful of what you guys have and what you can accomplish. And I know you're going to be better than us. So just keep pushing forward, all right?
Anybody else for good of the order?
Can I add something to my good of the order? I went pretty early on, and I didn't really know how everybody else was going to talk.
You were first.
Not first. But I didn't know how everybody else was going to talk. And I think I just want to echo my sentiments that I said earlier, that, at the end of the day, a lot of my friends that I have at college came from AUSG, and I'm endlessly hopeful for this organization and for the student body as a whole that we're able to hotly debate what we debated today, and yet at the end of the Senate meeting during public comment, good of the order, talk about mutual respect and respect for what each of us do, no matter how different our views may seem. Thank you. And again, I'll see you all soon.
Anybody else for good of the order? Okay, just quickly, I'm going to say thank you to all the 12 senators for allowing me to be your speaker. I really appreciated it and learned so much from it, and super enjoyed it so much. So thanks. And to all the 13 senators, good luck. See you on Sunday. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else for good of the order? Okay, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.